Crash course on World War I. World War I. Why did the First World War break out? World War I. World War I was a global conflict that lasted from 1914 to 1918. It involved the majority of the world's nations, including all of the great powers, and was fought in Europe, Africa, Asia, and on the high seas. The war resulted in the loss of millions of lives and caused significant political and social changes that would shape the world for decades to come. So, why did the First World War break out? There are several factors that contributed to the outbreak of World War I, including political alliances, militarism, nationalism, imperialism, and the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. At the heart of the conflict were two opposing military alliances, the Triple Entente, comprised of Great Britain, France, and Russia, and the Central Powers, led by Germany and Austria-Hungary. These alliances were formed as a result of a complex web of treaties and agreements between European powers. Militarism was also a key factor in the outbreak of the war. The major powers had been engaged in an arms race, with each nation seeking to build up its military strength and technology. This arms race had created a culture of aggression and a belief that war was necessary to assert national power and prestige. Nationalism was another significant factor in the outbreak of World War I. Many European nations had strong nationalist movements, with people feeling a strong sense of loyalty to their country and a desire to see it succeed. This led to tensions between nations and contributed to the belief that war was necessary to protect national interests. Imperialism was also a factor in the outbreak of the war. Many European nations had colonies around the world, and there was competition among them for control of these colonies. This competition led to tension between nations and contributed to the belief that war was necessary to expand national power and influence. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary on June 28, 1914, was the spark that ignited the conflict. The assassination was carried out by a member of a Serbian nationalist group and led to Austria-Hungary declaring war on Serbia. This set off a chain reaction of declarations of war by other nations, and soon the major powers were embroiled in a global conflict. The war was characterized by brutal trench warfare, with soldiers fighting in trenches dug into the ground. Chemical weapons were also used, including mustard gas, which caused horrific injuries and deaths. Despite the horrors of the war, there were moments of heroism and bravery. One example is the story of the Christmas Truce of 1914, when soldiers on both sides of the conflict called a temporary ceasefire and celebrated the holiday together in no man's land. The end of the war came in November 1918, when Germany signed the armistice that ended hostilities. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in June 1919, officially ended the war and imposed harsh reparations on Germany. The legacy of World War I is still felt today. The war changed the political and social landscape of Europe, leading to the rise of new nations and the downfall of old empires. The war also set the stage for World War II, which erupted just 2 decades later. Here are top 10 facts about World War I. 1. The First World War began on July 28, 1914, and lasted until November 11, 1918. It was fought primarily in Europe and involved more than 70 million military personnel, including soldiers from the Allied powers, primarily France, Russia, and the United Kingdom, and the Central Powers, primarily Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. 2. The war was triggered by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary on June 28, 1914, by a Serbian nationalist. This event led to a series of diplomatic and military escalations that ultimately resulted in war. 3. The war was marked by trench warfare, with both sides digging elaborate networks of trenches to protect themselves from enemy fire. Trench warfare was characterized by long periods of stalemate and high casualties. For the war saw the first use of many new military technologies, including tanks, airplanes, and chemical weapons. These new technologies helped to break the stalemate of trench warfare and contributed to the high casualties of the war. 5. The war had a devastating impact on civilians, with millions of people being displaced, injured, or killed. The war also led to food shortages, disease outbreaks, and economic disruptions. 6. The United States entered the war on April 6, 1917, after several years of neutrality. The entry of the United States was a major turning point in the war and helped to tip the balance in favor of the Allied powers. 7. The war had a profound impact on the global balance of power. It led to the collapse of several empires, including the Ottoman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the rise of new nation-states. 8. The war also had a significant impact on the development of international law and diplomacy. The Treaty of Versailles, which ended the war, established the League of Nations and laid the groundwork for the modern system of international relations. 9. The war had a profound impact on art, literature, and culture. Many artists and writers, including T.S. Eliot, Ernest Hemingway, and Wilfred Owen, were inspired by their experiences in the war and produced works that reflected the war's impact on society. 10. The war had a significant impact on the role of women in society. Women took on new roles in the workforce and played an important role in the war effort. The war also helped to pave the way for women's suffrage and other women's rights movements. In conclusion, the outbreak of World War I was the result of a complex web of political, economic, and social factors. It was a devastating conflict that left an indelible mark on the world and set the stage for many of the events of the 20th century. Here is a poem on World War I. In fields of green and tranquil skies, a war broke out, a world in cries. The world was never the same again. As nations fought in agony and pain, men marched off with pride and hope. But soon they learned of war's cruel scope. Trenches were dug, and death was near. Amidst the mud, the blood, and fear, gas clouds choked the very air, and bombs fell from the skies with a deadly flare. The sounds of guns and screams filled the night, as soldiers fought with all their might. Families waited with bated breath, hoping to hear their loved ones' steps. But many never returned from war, leaving behind memories and scars. The world was left in a state of shock, as countless lives were lost in a single block. But from the ashes, a new world was born, as nations united, and peace was sworn. We must never forget the sacrifice made of those who fought and the price they paid. Their courage and bravery will forever remain, as we honor them and remember their pain. Start planning your next global adventure with ease and convenience with our Booking.com referral link, https://www.booking.com/index.html. 8=7989335 is a great choice to plan your next trip. You can find and book flights, hotels, cars, and local attractions all in one place, and their price match guarantee ensures you're getting the best deal. Thank you for kind support our AnHub Metaverse channel, and please watch more interesting videos here.